Daily Detroit is brought to you by the community. Support our work at patreon.com/dailydetroit.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to your Daily Detroit for Thursday, August 14th, 2025. Coming to you from our studio at Techtown. We're sharing what to know and where to go. I am Jer Stays. On my left is none other than the Prince of Brightmoor himself, Norris Howard, back again. How are you?
Man, you already know the West Side is in the building anytime I'm here, and I'm so blessed and excited to be a part of the show once again.
I appreciate you as always. And then to my right is a sage, a journalist, a writer for the Michigan Chronicle, and founder of Detroit 1 Million, none other than the excellent Sam Robinson. It is an honor to have you back at our table.
It's a blessing to be here. Honor, all of the words that you want to use. The Honorable Jer Stays.
You're very kind. You're very kind. I am but a carnival barker. You all are the brilliant people.
Well, it's great to be here, nevertheless.
So let's get in. Let's just jump right into it. There's so much we can talk about. We are a little over a week out from the mayoral election.
Yeah.
We've had a little bit of dust settle. Why don't we start there and how we are feeling now that we've had some time to let things kind of percolate a little bit?
I got to say, man, when we had our live stream right after the election, I think my main takeaway was that I had a feeling that Mary would win. She would win big, but I was unaware of the sheer margin of victory that she would have. I think looking back on it, kind of going back at my own anecdotal experience, I think it was even worse to me like in retrospect. I think because obviously when you have Kinloch and you have the religious base and the base of voters that he had and his ability to reach out, I feel like he still missed a lot of opportunity to endear himself to the neutral voter by not appearing at the debates, not appearing on certain shows. And I'm not just talking about Daily Detroit. I'm just talking about
and he's welcome
general.
here. He's welcome here.
He's welcome here anytime. But I just felt like there was a lot of missed opportunity for his campaign to be able to really begin to change hearts and minds of those average voters. But after going to Mary's campaign victory event and after looking back at the numbers, it's going to be real tough for him in this general, man. Real tough.
Well, I'm going to turn it over to the expert. Sam Robinson, how are you feeling?
I'm feeling great. I wasn't too surprised. I think the biggest surprise of the municipal election was Denzel McCampbell beating Karen Whitsett in District 7. Sheffield, we knew she was going to have a major advantage over Kinloch. We didn't know how many of the percentage points would be the margin. I don't know what to say. I really feel like this is a Zoran type of distance. It feels like, Kinloch's camp, they have the time to sort of reframe the issues and get the narrative to his side. He's going to make it Mary is this corporatist Dugganite who is going to continue the work of the status quo, and I am of the grassroots. Direct action is my life's work, he said in the advertisement paid for by the 13th Congressional District. Solomon Kinloch had opportunities to really separate himself from Santil Jenkins and Todd Perkins. I think they performed better than I really thought they would. I thought it was going to be a bigger distance between Kinloch and Santil Jenkins. Sorry to Santil's camp. I really did, because when I walked around neighborhoods and when I went up and knocked doors to ask voters if they had a plan, most of the folks that I talked to actually told me it was going to be Mary, Kinloch, and Todd Perkins, not Santil. So I was expecting Perkins to compete with Santil. He did not. Santil took more of wealthy voters. If you look at Louis Aguilar's Detroit News story from over the weekend, he tells you where the candidates received the most votes. I think Solomon and Mary received votes in areas where low income people live typically, and Santil won votes where wealthy people live typically. So on that front, that wasn't very surprising to me. But what was surprising was the margin between Mary and Kinloch.
I'll be a nerd for a second. I want to circle back to McCampbell too, because I think it's a really interesting story. But I'll be a nerd for a second. I get the sense that there was a lot of similarity between the points that Durhal put up and Santil, and that if one of the two of them, like if Durhal hadn't run, I think that would have benefited Jenkins.
Well, I don't know because he didn't get many votes. I think if Perkins doesn't run, it benefits Jenkins. Perkins took 7% or 8%.
8%.
And I mean, I think what Fred took 1.4%. I don't have the data right here in front of me, but if you want to say, don't count out Kinloch, you would say Sheffield earned 43,000 votes to Kinloch's 14,900. There were 42,399 voters who didn't vote for Mary Sheffield. And so if you're Solomon Kinloch, you have to go back and say, why was that? Can I get any voters from Santil Jenkins and Todd Perkins?
And I think that's going to be the big question specifically for Kinloch, because when I look at the sort of cross-section of particularly those wealthy and middle-class voters that went to other camps, I'm not sure if he's going to be able to grasp them with his particular platform, right? So obviously he is coming in as a disruptor, right? That's his whole platform is, I am not what you've been used to for the past 12 to 15 years of, this corporate welfare, big business, handout type of administration. But the thing about it is there's a large cross section of the city of all income levels that are really okay with that.
My block on the east side, and I am not past Gratiot and Grand. It's all Sheffield signs. It was always all Sheffield signs.
Right.
Sheffield was out there knocking. Sheffield was in people's backyards.
Yeah, the ground game that I saw,
was
incredible.
off the chain.
It was a
off the
far
hook.
margin. And I'm not just saying Kinloch, but all the candidates, right? I mean, I'd watch every day on social media on Mary's Instagram story. She would go live in those last few days knocking on doors, and she wouldn't even have to ring the doorbell. She would walk up and the person would come out and say, I already voted for you.
Well, but also she is, and I'm not saying that Kinloch doesn't have this, but Mary is magnetic.
Yeah.
And that helps her.
She is, but also it's the familiarity of the face, right? Like Kinloch, I think for people who are very familiar with the city, who are very familiar with particularly the Black church, very familiar with the faith-based community here in Metro Detroit, like Kinloch is a recognizable figure there. But when we're talking about the greater sort of Detroit populace, I mean, Mary Sheffield has been in city government for the last decade. You know, so it sometimes just comes down to the fact that we know her face, we know her name even longer than she's been involved in politics.
And it doesn't play well on social media, but it is my experience that oftentimes social media and what I hear with residents does not match, especially when it comes to things around Duggan, because I hear a lot of people and I talk to people on my block. They liked what he did. They had questions about what he did, but they like the end result and they want to see more progress, but they just want that progress to hit the neighborhoods.
And that's why Kinloch's message of the two Detroits and, the corporate elites are, running amok on workers. He tells me one of the reasons why he even entered the race was his inspiration, taking inspiration from Sean Fain's stand-up strike. And this idea that, these elected officials, when they go into these boardrooms with, these executive class elites, they don't know how to stand up for themselves and their residents. And I think that is true, where I think, it kind of falls on deaf ears as people remember 10 years ago, their streetlights not working or their garbage not being picked up, right? And it is interesting to me, while he is certainly a first-time candidate, I would say he's a political newcomer. He is flanked by a longtime Democratic official and his brother and Jonathan Kinloch, right? He is supported by political heavyweights, Wayne County Executive Warren Evans. He had early support at the Michigan Democratic Convention in February. U.S. Rep. Brenda Lawrence came out and endorsed Solomon Kinloch.
And UAW.
Of course, the UAW endorsement, might not have powered his primary result as much as maybe some folks would have thought. Of course, in New York, the UAW also endorsed Zoran. And
Well, I mean, but my argument would be is that a place like SEIU, don't they have a lot more members actually in the city? Because there aren't that many plants in the city that are UAW.
You know, that's something that the UAW would strongly disagree with. They would bring you the number of retirees in the city that are all like, you know, continue to be UAW members. So that's where they would say we are the largest union that has a presence in the city of Detroit is through the retirees.
That feels like a maybe. I hear him.
Will they, and how they supported his campaign, I think, is the bigger question, right? They did door knocking. They sent the boots on the ground campaign, but we only saw Sean Fain once. I think playing into the Sean Fain, playing into what just happened in New York could serve Kinloch really well. And instead, what we're seeing is, what is he talking about right now after the primary is crime.
Yeah, crime.
And so if we think about it in, you know, are you going to, in the power of the prayer, I've seen, you know, they talk about, and I will, you know, to your point about Mary being magnetic, I do think Kinloch has the same effect on people. I think even when you look at the...
different people.
Yes,
different
certainly
people,
different
right? Because
people.
there's a lot of voters. I think there's 15% of Detroit that will never vote for Kinloch.
Sure.
You know, I think there's a lot of questions, although he's made statements about the LGBTQ community. The feedback I get is a no. Because what they worry about is him getting into office like Republicans and being like, okay, my personal belief is X, but when you get into office, will you come through? Right. And that community's been burned a lot by politicians.
Right. Credit to Mary that she has, I think, perhaps for the first time in her life, gone to some of the LGBT groups and organizations in a real way for support. I do think some of the folks that back Mary have questionable views on. I mean, I know that they do. When I go into the church and I see them praying over her, Corletta Vaughn, who in 2015, when the Supreme Court legalized same-sex marriage, you know, disparaged gay people on her YouTube. Shots fired there. But no, I mean it's true. I mean, it's not like,
but it's a real thing.
It's like they're both come from
church
background. So I don't really want to go into the whole. I do think that, you know, if Kinloch wanted to marry gay people, he could do it at the city hall. He doesn't need to do it in the church. But that is the truth around why that exists on their website, that they believe that marriage is between a man and a woman, is because the people that donate the most money, and this is just my assumption, the people that donate the most money that make up their executive board are against same-sex marriage, and they don't want same-sex marriage to happen in their church. Do I think Kinloch himself is against same-sex marriage? Personally, I don't, based on the conversations that I've had with him.
Yeah, but I think at the same time, when that becomes a part of your campaign platform, that will damage you in the general election, point blank, period.
I will pause you because it's his church website. It's not his campaign platform.
That's his church, and he's standing on that. It's his church work that,
and he would
makes
say,
him qualified.
"I'm not running to be Detroit's pastor."
Right, but
we've pushed him on all these issues.
And I'm glad you have, because I've seen you do it. But the thing about it is that I think when we're talking about the average voter, and we're talking about the person that's not necessarily tied in, where they're scrubbing every campaign website and looking at every potential policy standpoint, people are going to look at Kinloch more and say, this is a pastor running for mayor.
And they have.
As opposed to looking at Mary, who has been city council president.
And they might not even know that.
And the name connection.
She is also a minister. They might not know.
She
doesn't have a large congregation. The thing that I will say about Kinloch is he had a chance, right? With direct action is my life's work. He had a chance to take full Zoran. He had a chance to take a full Zoran, and they chose not to. And I think, when they lose, that will be because why? Yeah. I mean, he had an opportunity to take it full blown Sean Fain,
but
full blown.
He can't take it full Zoran because he hasn't lived in the city for long. So you can't be like, I love my city. Like
I would even argue that. I would argue he doesn't live in Detroit because he's more from Detroit than you and I. Is he not?
I don't know. More than Jared.
I don't know.
He grew up here.
Yeah, but like, I don't know. My family's been here.
Sure.
Has
his family not been here?
I don't. Here's the thing. When you have a multi-million-dollar mansion in Oakland Township, okay, that sends a message.
It does. It sends a message
to some voters, not to all, and maybe you don't care about it. Some voters don't care about it.
I guess the other rich people of Detroit.
Has he sold the mansion?
Has he what?
Has he sold the mansion in Oakland Township?
No. He's going to live there. That's his house.
But that's my point. If you're committed to Detroit, sell the mansion.
Yeah, and listen, I want. Here's the last thing I want to say, because I do want to talk to you specifically about the race in District 7.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, at the end of the day, there's a level of there's a level of relatability, there's a level of authenticity that people feel from Mary Sheffield that they simply don't feel from Kinloch. I think the mansion is a part of it. I think the church thing is a part of it. But ultimately, and Sam, to your point that I agree this was the biggest misstep of his campaign, is that he could have leaned into the fact that I am on the ground, I am working for you, I am in the community. And she's been in the ivory tower of city government for the better part of a decade.
When I would ask on Mackinac Island, the candidates, talk about the business community. Who are the business community, right? And Fred and Mary would have specific names. When I asked Kinloch, talk about who is the business community, right? He would say, well, I'll leave that to them to name, the capitalists of Detroit that, go in and take the wealth. And so it's like, oh my God, dude, like, are you a leftist? Like, and I don't think he had the ideology
but also,
fully
he was right
formed
there.
out. He was close.
But I don't think Detroit is that leftist. Like when I get feedback, when I get that feedback, who's getting me jobs?
It's not.
Right? And if you're somebody who's a Detroiter who's worried about, hey, you want to go from making whatever, the 40,000 or 38,000, that's the average, I don't remember it off the top of my head, to getting to the regional average of like 60,000 or 70,000.
Yeah.
Where is the plan for that? Where is the plan for making Detroiters wealthier, not just we need to make things more affordable.
His plan that we've seen him back off of, right? I mean, not just not talk about as much, was the 10 grocery stores in neighborhoods and the 10,000 affordable housing units. And he's on Facebook, sort of outlined other housing proposals, community land trust proposals. But yeah, there was an opportunity for Kinloch to run to the left of Mary. His backers, the people that are, entrenched in his inner circle, are not. He actually, I think, is a little bit more progressive than the folks that he has running his campaign personally, just through the conversations that I've had with Solomon Kinloch. I will say to the point I think that you're trying to make, Mary got so much more votes because Mary ran a more fleshed out campaign. She had way more money. Also to the point of Mary was better at making her points. I mean, Mary has been sort of, not maybe in the back of her mind, but in the front, long time thinking about, well, there's going to be an opening for the city of Detroit mayorship.
Soon,
I better, brush up on my ability to articulate policy. And she has, and it's rather quite impressive. I watched her on Fox 2 last night, and Roop is asking her what she would do if Trump were to take over the Detroit Police Department like we've seen in D.C. or L.A. And she answered same with ICE. There was a Southwest Detroit, it was a grassroots community forum. And, Santil Jenkins, you might almost expect to have a better answer on how to deal with ICE. No, Mary killed her, because while Santil gave this long 2-minute long story about, somebody that I knew was going through an ICE and I had to help. If I have to help them as the CEO of a thaw, then what the heck? Mm-hmm. And then Mary's just like, no, we're not going to allow this to happen. And if it does, this is X. I'm going to make sure no resources go to ICE. I mean, the message was so clear from Mary's campaign,
and she's getting better. And as we said, like over from where she was this time 2 years ago to where she is now, and her ability to effectively communicate policy, I find that she's gotten significantly more clear. She's gotten more direct, and she's spent a lot less time in the weeds of her ideas and getting to a place where she can say this and move on. But I want us to move to
I want to talk about council. I want to spend around 10 minutes on that, because I think it's really important. Council has a lot of impact on things. We had mentioned Denzel McCampbell and that race.
Yeah.
Let's start. Why don't we kind of start there and then walk through the contested races? Because there's just a lot going on.
Yeah, District 7 is by far going to be, in my opinion, the most interesting race for city council, or one of the most interesting races for city council. You got Denzel Anton McCampbell, who is a Democratic Socialist, standing on that platform as firmly as one can stand on it, and going to be running against Karen Wissett, who, for lack of a better term, has made herself easily one of the most controversial people in Michigan politics.
She's certainly polarizing.
Yeah, and this is going to be, if any race has potential to provide fireworks, in terms of the rhetoric, in terms of the personality types of the candidates is going to be this one. And, I think for me, looking at how McCampbell was able to slightly outperform Whitsett in terms of the vote tally, I think this is another one of those things where it's like, hey, down ballot, moderate Democrats, man, y'all better be paying attention, because the left wing of the party and the Democratic Socialists, not just nationwide, but in your backyard, are making moves, and they're stepping up, and they are running clear, concise, I don't want to say well-funded, but more funded than usual campaigns.
Well, more funded than any other campaign running for city council. He raised $92,000.
That's what I'm saying.
Which is not actually that much money,
But that's what I'm saying. More funded than usual.
It's more than any other city council candidate, which, how did he do it? By being a part of DSA. DSA is the reason why Denzel received donations from
Democratic
Los
Socialists
Angeles,
of America.
San Francisco, DC. He got money from all across the country, guys, and they knocked over 15,000 doors, made over 3,000 phone calls, mobilizing over 200 volunteers in support through the August election. McCampbell says his campaign is aiming to triple these numbers ahead of the November election. So, DSA folks, you won a primary in Detroit. The issue that I see come up on Facebook when the DSA folks publish the photo of themselves, the volunteers, right? What is it? In D7, that's a black district.
That's black.
Big
black,
people
black,
go
black,
West Side
yeah,
Detroit.
West
It's
Side.
all white volunteers at DSA.
Because that leads to a point I wanted to highlight for listeners who may not know off rip, right? I want to be accessible here. So that district runs from like Fullerton in 96, south of Linden, crosses Grand River for a little bit. Its easternmost boundary is like Dexter and Roselawn and Oakman. And then to the south, it kind of cuts through down by Dearborn and Ford Road.
A lot of Rouge Park in that district.
But that district does not look like the 7.2, to say the least.
No, it doesn't
Absolutely
look like the DSA membership that exists. And that's something that on a Twitter space yesterday, one of the lead organizers, one of the funny people on Twitter that is a DSA member. I think their name is Meme Organizer or something. I don't know what their name is, but they held a Twitter space, and I was able to ask them exactly this question. And how they, answered it was, well, we got to do a better job of being intentional about recruiting black members. And I mean, that's as easy as it gets, but it doesn't seem like you're being very effective at that.
I have a question, and you know way more than I do. Do we have any kind of idea on breakdown as far as race of voters? Because like in Chicago, we know that 61% of white voters in 2023 went to the polls, right? And they highly overperformed the rest of the city. And in different cities, we have that breakdown. Do we have that breakdown in Detroit?
Will. Well, we're going to get it from the state. That is going to come out about a month later. So
Okay.
next month.
You're way
we're gonna
smarter than
find
me,
it.
so.
No, the state has that information because it's a part of the qualified voter file.
Yep.
Okay.
The city does not. The city gets it from the state. In this District 7 race, 9,947 voters total. Denzel received 3,397. And then Karen Whitsett, she's a state rep, received 3,341. Now, Karen Whitsett, of course, told me, she preferred meeting with Trump over her meeting with Biden. She met with Trump in 2020 to champion hydroxychloroquine.
Okay, question.
Yeah.
Since this is a DSA race, do you think the president will get involved?
I don't know. I don't know how many races they got going on across the country.
And that connection with and that personal connection with Whitsett.
Right. It is interesting to my perspective. This is a representation, this race right here in District 7. Like you can look at some of these council races, particularly in D6 and D7, as examples of the Democratic Party in America as like a microcosm of how they're shifting. On one hand, you have Whitsett, who's, upset with Democrats from a conservative perspective, right? She's against abortion. She's against a lot of the,
the social issues.
Yes. Let me not make a specific example.
Yeah.
I don't know what Karen thinks on
but,
one
but
day
so
to the
far,
next.
the social
But-
issues,
Yeah, I will say, Karen is well liked by her supporters. I mean, there's a reason why she is getting to that point. There's a reason why she's in office currently, right? She is a trusted voice to many residents there. I mean, when I ask the District 7 city manager, I forget the person's name, but she expected, this was I think 3 or 4 months ago at a youth forum trying to get young people civically engaged. What is her name? Her last name is Davis. I just forget her name. I'm sorry. But she told me she expected Karen Whitsett to move on. And at that point, she hadn't even heard of Denzel McCampbell. She didn't even know who he was. When I asked Whitsett, have you met Denzel? She says, I've never seen him. I don't even know what he looks like. So it is interesting. He has a lot more money to spend than her, but I would imagine that she's going to get help as she did to get on to get in the State House of Representatives. She received money from a Duggan-connected PAC to do so, and has since said Duggan is the smartest politician she's ever met. So I would imagine she's going to get help.
I think you've hit on a very important point here, which is particularly in 6 and 7, we are seeing the bifurcation of the Democratic Party, right? We are seeing in real time where this schism is happening. And the schism is happening on these sort of, as they call them, kitchen table issues, so to speak, right? The Democratic Socialists of America are making headway specifically around things like healthcare, especially in the wake of the big beautiful bill. They're making headways on healthcare. They're making headways on Gaza. They're making headways on the economy, and they're doing this by just having very clear messaging and young candidates.
Yeah, standing on issues, on business, as Justin Bieber and the rest of Twitter would say. But in District 6, obviously, we have Gabby Santiago Romero and Tyrone Carter. I saw both of them last night at the DCFC stadium unveiling. We're going to get an amazing new soccer stadium in Corktown, Southwest. Both of them were there, but Gabby was the one that spoke on stage, talking about how exciting it is for her. Catching up with Tyrone after the fact, it just seems clear he recognizes himself as the underdog in the race. I do think that has a chance to be a really close race. Do I also think it has a chance for Gabby to just run away? I do.
And for people who need orientation, that is Southwest Detroit.
Yes.
And a sliver of downtown and Corktown as well.
And Tyrone Carter, what he represents, obviously Gabby is the young Hispanic, queer, DSA candidate, right?
Yeah.
So she represents these intersectional communities within the Democratic Party. She is 3 decades younger than Tyrone Carter, who, of course, has 30 years of legislative experience over Gabby. And he really represents the Black Southwest, whereas Gabby really represents the Hispanic Southwest. Some of their supporters try to play that up. Neither of them have really gone after each other on those. Don't think they will.
And it would be political suicide.
Don't think they will. One thing that, Tyrone Carter is running into is the fact that voters are untrusting of candidates and politicians who are taking money, receiving money from large corporations, healthcare groups, or utility companies like DTE and Blue Cross, Blue Shield, Ford, and GM. He said at a Southwest candidate forum for just him, Gabby, and Anita Martin was the other candidate. I think she was a write-in. He said it's insulting when voters insinuate politicians who take corporate money owe them something in return. And I, in my head, say, Tyrone.
That is a bad answer. That's a no answer.
He
would
said,
be better
who you accept money from means you're bought and paid for. That's an insult to almost anybody running. The biggest contributor to any campaign that I've ever had was me. How do you represent the poorest district? You're not rich. Where do you get the money from? Gabby's hit back was there are rich people that live in our district. Look at Corktown.
Right.
There's rich people that are here. And she says that it's a lot of hard work to get small donations en masse.
It is, but I think the thing is in continuing the sort of narrative about this split, because I try to go in and then pull out and look at how does this affect sort of the political narrative across the city and across the region, and this will continue. And you're going to start to see this happening, whether it be in Metro Detroit-wide or statewide, particularly next year when a lot of this stuff is also coming up again, is that people are upset with dark money in politics and PACs and the way everything is worked post Citizens United. People are upset that they're not seeing the next generation of politicians step up and be elected. They're upset at the fact that where we are now in terms of the national discourse is incredibly worrying and frightening. And I think a lot of what we're seeing in these city council races is representative of that. And even to me, what we're seeing even in the mayor's race is representative of that. I mean, Mayor Sheffield's 38 years old. Like, she will be one of the youngest mayors in the country if she wins. And so that is going to be a narrative that I think you're going to be seeing nationwide. And I think in places like New York, in places like Detroit, in places like Chicago, you're going to start seeing that be bellwether for, I think, what potentially could be happening in cities across the country.
Let's go to District 2, which includes some of the most active residential areas as far as voting in the city, including University District, Palmer Woods,
Victory
Bagley.
Row, baby.
That's what it's called, right? Victory Row.
Victory Row, baby.
As well as a number of other places, of course. It goes west to like the Southfield. This is all rough. You can look it all up if you want. But west of the Southfield, and then it kind of goes down south to some Linden and some streets like that, so people know.
Yeah, District 2. So, you're looking at Angela Whitfield Callaway in that district that has pretty much had a decent lead, 20-point lead there, or excuse me, a 15-point lead there. Then you got Roy McAllister Jr., as we said, one of the best-dressed people in Detroit politics, always fresh, always got his steppers on, as I like to call him.
He's got a lot of money to spend on it. He gave himself a ton of money for his campaign.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you know what I'm saying? He always fly. But, I think it's going to be a really interesting race out there because specifically of Roy McAllister's ability to fund himself. Also, Whitfield Callaway, I think, is just an interesting figure. And I think her ability to be able to sort of position herself so far has been pretty positive. But, I want to hear, Sam, your opinion, particularly on this race, because I think this is a lesser known race, but I think it's just as important because of the voting block that exists in that district.
Right. Wealthiest Detroiters are in District 2. Mm-hmm. A lot of people thought Helena would make it past that primary, and I just never did. And I'll tell you this story. Helena probably won't like me to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway.
Last name for people know? Or
Helena Scott is the state representative. She represents Detroit, Ferndale, a few other communities. She wanted to leave the legislature. And I asked her, are you doing this because you're out of minority? And she says, well, yeah, we're out of minority now. Not if next year we win it back. I say, Helena, you're not doing that. She goes, shh, I don't know what happened there. Roy and Angela went back and forth last time. I mean, Angela defeated Roy, who was the incumbent, in 21. She was, I think, 8 or 12 points ahead of Roy this time. So I really think that she's going to come in, pretty confident and strong as the incumbent this time around. But it's a district that they flip-flop their incumbents all the time. I think, Roy, of course, has a advantage in terms of there are groups looking to oppose Angela Whitfield Callaway, who is a constant pain in the mayoral administration. She is constantly sort of scrutinizing decisions, contracts that come through council that say might not be with a Detroit company to do tailoring and dry cleaning services for the police uniforms. She'll say, why is this a Warren company? Why is this Sterling Heights? Why can't we do this in Detroit?
And I think to a certain subset of people in Detroit that they like that.
Yes,
they want that constantly. They kind of want that presence of somebody who's always going like, but why? But why is? And that's kind of what she's been in this administration so far. I think it'll be a closer race in the general than I think it was in the primary. But I think because of just where we are in terms of a new administration coming in terms of, a very different city council that, potentially could be set up citywide. I think that she'll be able to just barely eke out Roy, but as we said, the money always talks, and Roy always finds a way to get to the money.
He's gonna get it, man. If he has to use it, if he has to go to his own bank account and pull out money and spend it on himself. Not a lot was talked about the candidates that literally spent money on their own campaign, like Santil Jenkins, to do her own ad paid for by Santil Jenkins. Kinloch spent all his own money to do his own stuff. Mary really dominated. Mary and Denzel McCampbell really dominated fundraising this time over. What does that say? You know, a lot of excitement around a young black woman and a lot of excitement around a DSA candidate. And if I'm a Democrat right now, I'm really, probably going to look at DSA and be like, whoa, what can y'all do for me? A lot of people want to be tagged as a Democratic Socialist, and one of the sort of requirements of DSA candidates, if you are a DSA member and you are running for an office, they do expect you to call yourself a Democratic Socialist first. And that is something that I've heard from Democrats who are friendly to DSA and might share values, but don't want to be dubbed and titled a socialist.
All right, I'm going to end it here with a question for you, Sam. What is the number one thing that we need to be thinking about in the next few weeks and months as we head closer to the election?
We should probably be going back and looking at 01 and 05. There hasn't been a runner-up in a primary that's defeated the winner of the primary, the person that got the most votes in the primary. That dates back to 09. There was 2 elections that year. 05 and 01, right? You had Gil Hill. He was the city council president at the time. Everyone thought he was the favorite. Polling thought he was the favorite. Then Kwame won big time. Kwame won against Freeman Hendricks after losing in the primary to Freeman Hendricks. He was really able to rehabilitate his image after not the text message scandal, but other scandals.
Wasn't that a non-majority win, though? I'm trying to think. I'm trying to remember.
I don't have the data for you.
I think it was a non-majority win.
I will tell you that if Kinloch wants to do anything, he should probably enlist the help of Santil Jenkins, who, to my understanding, does not like Mary Sheffield. And if I'm Solomon Kinloch, I am going to sort of assemble an Avengers-style team of people who do not like Mary Sheffield and Mike Duggan. And if I'm city council, I'm really looking out for Gabby. Last night told me, this is hot off the press. This is first in Daily Detroit. Gabby Santiago Romero told me she will likely endorse a candidate for mayor. And when I asked her, do you believe the other council members are going to endorse a candidate? She said, probably maybe. That's the farthest we've gotten. I asked Letitia Johnson this at ECN, at Donna Givens Davidson's Eastside Community Network. Are you going to endorse a candidate? She said probably after the primary. So last night, Gabby tells me she is going to endorse. The other day, a month ago, before the primary election, Letitia Johnson said that she's going to endorse after the primary. And I asked Gabby, so you're going to endorse Mary? And she said, we'll see. So she didn't answer my question. I could not see her own colleagues endorsing the other candidate.
No.
In this. I just couldn't see that. Especially with Gabby and Mary, where they've worked on similar issues. Both of them will up each other in answers. I don't think they have the exact same value set or political beliefs at all. But I do think that there is a overlap there. If city council members in large endorse Mary Sheffield, I think that says a lot. If they don't,
that says even more.
I think that says a lot. But I don't know. Some of these members have their own races. That's obviously. But I was getting to that point to say, if Duggan endorses,
it's game over.
That's it.
It's game over.
If Duggan endorses Mary Sheffield, that's it. Kinloch, I'm sorry, but you have to make sure that doesn't happen. Maybe call Duggan and say I'm sorry for the, because I understand I do think Jonathan Kinloch has a strong relationship with the mayor, and obviously he has resented the two Detroit's narrative and has actively tried to resist the Tale of Two Cities narrative, and so he's not going to slow down in that. And so I would imagine the wedge there probably drives a little bit further. It was funny at the State of the City, Duggan goes through all these faith organizations and churches that are doing really good work, and everyone noticed how he left out Triumph. Obviously, in an election
did not say Triumph.
Did not, but I just think it's really interesting. Kinloch talks about, I've never taken one dime from the city. It's very interesting. Keep it locked to who is getting endorsed. That's what I'm paying attention to.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, with that, I think it's time for us to wrap it up today. A little bit longer episode than usual of your Daily Detroit, but I appreciate all the insights. I wanted to get it all in one package for people.
Yes, here we are.
Man.
And if people want to follow Sam, where can they go?
They can go on Twitter. You can go on google.com and you can just type in Sam Robinson Detroit, because that's where I'm at. And at that point in the clout of, you can just Google my name plus my city that I live in. But pretty soon you'll be able to just Google my name. I think if you Google my name, a photographer will come up first, and then like a former football soccer player. But one day, Samuel Robinson, I used to go with Samuel J. Robinson at M Live. One day you'll just Google Sam Robinson and you'll find me all there.
Let's get them there.
Yeah, we're going to put like 15 links on Daily Detroit.
Let's get them.
Put them all, Sam Robinson, Sam Robinson.
Twitter. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Elon's evil Twitter still.
Well, with that, I'm Jairus Days.
And I'm Norris Howard.
Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much to our members on Patreon, patreon.com/Daily Detroit, because local media requires local support to survive. So thank you so much for your support. Remember that you are somebody, and we'll see you around Detroit.